Hey, how is everybody tonight? We have a live audience over a distance. We've got kids another state away watching. So that's going to be fun. We have Tia and Lindley and Desmond. And this is a special story just for them. So they're all sitting up in the bed just listening to Grandma's story and not thinking about anything but getting a story. And then guess what happens? They end up on Pegasus's back. It's dark outside for right now, and they take off and they're going up on his back, and again they're all giggling and laughing, and they're so glad to be with Pegasus again, because the last time they went, Lindley got to be the hero, and it was pretty exciting. Yeah. So they got on Pegasus's back and they started going east, and it began to get lighter and lighter. You'd think it'd be getting darker, but for some magic reason it began to get lighter and lighter. And they went across the eastern states, and they went across the north this time. They went across Pennsylvania and New York, and then they went down to the Atlantic Ocean, and they went out to sea, and they're over the ocean. They went past the beaches, and they're over the ocean. And they're thinking, oh boy, we're gonna go to Dragon Island. And they were right. After a while, they began to see the mountain range of Dragon Island. And the kids were so excited, and Lindley was excited too, because she remembers the last time when they rescued the Pegasus ponies. Yeah, that was a grand time. And she's the one that found them. So they get there, and Pegasus takes them down and puts them down on the beach, as he always does, tips his wing, and down they go, just a scampering down onto the beach, and they start running towards the mountain. And pretty soon, just like they thought, they heard whoosh, 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 coming over the mountains, and here came their dragons. And everybody was exciting. The children were jumping up and down, all excited. The dragons went up, did a full circle around each one, came in for a landing, crouched down on the ground, and let each of the children climb up on their back. Each one had their own dragon. And they said, oh, where are we going? Where are they going? And he said, well, we have a special treat for you today. So the dragons took off. And of course, they had to play a game of tag. And they had to play Follow the Valley. And they had to play How Fast Can We Go Up the Side of the Mountain. And the fun game today, because they'd all been on the dragons enough that they could actually play some more serious games. They tried to see, they did some loop-de-loops and some twirls and some zigzags to see if the children could stay on. Now, each one of them now had a dragon saddle, and they were actually buckled, not buckled in, but they were wedged in so that they were in nice and tight. And they had to hold special reins for the dragons so that they weren't falling out. But the dragons went right upside down, so the children were upside down, seeing the ground and the trees. And then the dragons would go as close to the top of the trees, and they'd take their claws on their feet, and they would just go like this across the top of the trees and watch them flip up. Even pull them down and let them go boing back up. And then an eagle jumped out in the middle. Oh, and they started chasing the eagle. Now, the eagle was quick. They're more slow, but he was quicker than the dragons when it was turning around. So that didn't last very long. But they had a grand time, and they could see the river and the waterfall and the rapids and everything below. And they started towards a part of the island that the children had never been to before. It was a beautiful part of the island. It was a little higher up, wasn't right down by the beach, but it was a huge green pasture-like field that went on and on with a meadow and a stream going down through the middle, a bubbling brook where the water rolled over the rocks, and the children went down. And the dragons said, we're going to drop you off here, we're going to leave you alone, and we'll be back in a little while, after a while. They'd never been to this part of the island. They didn't even recognize all the trees. There were different kinds of trees, and the babbling brook was something that they hadn't seen before. But they got off, and they just started wandering around together, and it was just the three of them. So Desmond made sure he had a hold of both the girls' hands because he was taking care of them. And Lindley kept going, Pegasus, Pegasus, pony, 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 Pegasus, Pegasus. You know what she wanted? She wanted to see the ponies again. So they were walking. They walked through this meadow, through the tall grass, and they crossed over the babbling brook and went into another field, and they started to hear some noises. So they kept walking towards these noises, almost sounded like whinnying. Well, when they turned around the brook and around the curve of it, guess what they saw? A whole herd of Pegasuses, mamas and babies. Every color, you can imagine their wings. Some of the babies, their wings were small, and the mamas were taking care of them. And these were some of the ponies that had gotten lost. And they wanted the children to come and play with them for an afternoon as a thank you for them rescuing them when they'd gone into the mighty big cave and gotten lost. When Lindley found the cave and went in and got them, and all the children helped rescue them. So each one of them stood there, and Pegasus are usually white, but in this story, they're all different colors as they're growing up and depending on who their mama is. So they went around, and each one went around until they knew which pony, which horse, which colt they wanted to ride. And onto the back they got. Each one chose the color that they wanted. And they were both excited. The ponies and the Pegasuses and the children were all excited. And they got on and they walked around. They walked around for a long time, looking at different parts of the field, different parts of the grasslands. And they even walked up into the foothills. And then pretty soon the children are gone, especially Tia. She said, faster, faster. Now, Desmond, he didn't just want to go faster. He wanted to fly. But that wasn't why we were here today. We weren't there to fly on the Pegasuses. They were there to see the herd, to get to know them, and to enjoy the thank you of just playing with this beautiful herd of Pegasuses. So that the children were each one on, and Lindley, oh, she and her baby Pegasus just jabbered and jabbered like they just talked and talked like they were best buddies. They understood each other, and Tia, she finally talked hers into going faster, and it started to trot, and then pretty soon it started to canter, and then pretty soon it just took off at a gallop. And Des said, "Wait a minute, I'm not going to get left out." And off he went. And we know Desmond, he's a little competitive. When he sees somebody in front of him, whoo, away he goes. And now Tia was ahead of him, but Desmond's coming along. He's coming along faster, and they're galloping, and Tia's going, "I'm going to go faster." Well, Tia had to go around a tree, and Desmond shot ahead of her just like that. Yep. And he was ahead, and Tia went, "Oh, that's not going to work." And she took off, and she talked to her Pegasus. She wouldn't hit him or anything like that. Of course, the Pegasus wanted to win as bad as the kids on their back. And so Lindley takes off again, and she turns. That means that if Desmond's going to be in the race, he's got to turn and keep up with her too. So she takes off, and she gets up to this brook. And her Pegasus is a baby, but it's bigger. And when it gets to the brook, guess what it did? Jumped over, whoo, just like that. And Desmond's coming along, galloping along, and he goes whoo, up over the brook onto the other side. And then they take off side by side, just going as fast as they can. Pretty soon the little Pegasuses are trying to make their wings go. And so here's what happens. When they're they can't fly yet, but because they're making their wings go and they're going so fast, they're like, their feet are barely touching the ground, and there's more distance in between each one time their hoofs hit the ground. So they're like air running, and it goes faster and faster and smoother and smoother. And the other Pegasuses are just cheering them on and yelling. And then they finally get to the stand of trees where the race ends, and they both finished at the same time. And they are they're okay though. They had a grand time, and they needed to stop so that the Pegasuses could get something to drink. And then they turned around and they started walking back. And you know, Lindley hadn't been in the race, but she and her Pegasus had joined in with a couple other of the small ponies, and they were just having a grand time. They were playing Ring Around the Rosie, and they were playing Dodge and Dart and Roll, and they were rolling in the dirt, or not much dirt, but in the grass, and they were having just a great time. And Tia and Lindley were excited because they're thinking pretty soon these Pegasuses that they've just really gotten to know are going to get bigger, and eventually they'll be able to fly, which means they're going to have a Pegasus on Dragon Island that's their very own. How exciting is that? And they went back and they all rested, got a big drink out of the brook, and there were snacks. Somehow or another, they ended up with snacks in their pocket. And they hear whoosh, 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 and guess what it is? It's the dragons coming back. And they were happy because they really wanted to see their dragons, but they were kind of sad too because they really wanted to play with the Pegasuses too. So anyways, the dragons come down, they run over, they say goodbyes to all the Pegasus, gave them hugs and enjoyed them and said goodbye. And then they went over and got on their dragons, and the dragons said, "We've got to get going, Pegasus is waiting." And they took off, and of course they couldn't just go straight shot. They had to play some follow the leader, and they had to jump off the top of the mountain. Yeah, they had to play that game. And they had to play a little hide and seek in the forest and among the rocks and around the foothills. But finally they got back to the beach where Pegasus was, and they got down. They got off, and Pegasus said, as he always did, "Children, did you have a good time?" "Oh yeah, they had a great time." They were all talking about it. And onto his back they went. They clambered up, and he took off to try to get them back and home so that they'd be home before their mama missed them. So when they got on the back, he took them across the ocean, across the beach, across the New York, went the northern route again, and Pennsylvania, and back to Ohio, and then in an instant they were back on their bed. And Lindley was squirreling around and all excited. So you know what the children did? What'd they do next? They reached in their pocket and they pulled out their treasure. And you know what? This time, every single one of them had the same treasure, except they were different colors. Each one had a tiny Pegasus with little wings, but it was the color of the Pegasus that they had ridden that day. So they were all excited. And guess what? When they pulled the Pegasus out, it started dancing around in their hand. And they had to quick put it away so Mom didn't see it. Back in its pocket they went, and it was a trinket. And they went. Tia said, "Did that just really happen?" Desmond said, "It sure did." And by now, they're beginning to get a pretty good collection of treasures. We're going to have to get a bracelet or a necklace or something so we can put them all on there. So, that's it for Dragon Island, and a ride and a fun afternoon with the Herd of Pegasus. And again, a thank you to Lindley and the other children and the dragons for rescuing them. Good night.